ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Transformers Reviews. Today we are taking a look at the Insecticon Ransack. And he is an Insecticon that transforms into a locust.
Actually, you guys, excuse me there. We are taking a look at Kickback, but we are going to really quickly take a look at his pre-tooling for whenever this thing gets re-released as Ransack. Now, as you guys can notice here, these Energon weapons, they actually do have a port that is not used for him in particular. Again, this is pre-tooling for this little bit to be used as a locust body, or maybe other pieces that will use the port this plugs into. But you can kind of see how it would actually give it more of that locust shape, shifting away from the more grasshopper thing. But kind of seeing this as maybe a possibility of what he may be like, that's kind of cool to see. You can still have the gun plugged under there, which is kind of cool. A giant insect that has basically a undermounted cannon that he can blast you in beast mode. That is actually kind of cool. Now, one of the things that the instructions brings out is that you can plug his Energon weapons into different places on the wings. I kind of like this. It beefs up the wings a little bit, but I am more of a traditional guy because I do like to have it more like this. Now, I will go ahead and talk about this because this is giving me some serious 2004 Energon vibes. And it is interesting because once you look at the detailing and stuff on it, you can see a little bit of molding of technological detail with more of the organic edges. But one thing I forgot to mention is whenever these are plugged onto the wings, this gives me very much a callback to the Fall of Cybertron or War for Cybertron Kickback that they released in that line, which this guy does take a couple cues from him, ironically enough. So here he is with his 1985 self, but you can see the major thing that everybody takes note of is how much bigger he is. Now, personally, that may actually finally put him in scale with all of the other figures that we are having. One thing that is obviously different about the old guy and the new one is that he had chrome wings back in the day. They just said whenever they were unveiling this guy that they wanted to go with more of the beast aesthetic like they'd done with a lot of the Kingdom guys. And again, does it make me dislike his beast mode? No, I actually like it a lot, to be honest. Again, if you do a slight adjustment to make it different instead of just a straight rip and upscale, I'm actually down with that. Anyway, guys, I'm glad they unveiled Kickback first, because out of all three Insecticons, he's my favorite. Speaking of those guys, let's see how he looks with all three of the original boys. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that the Insecticon clones were smaller than the actual boys themselves. However, I could be wrong. But if you have the original Insecticons, once we get all three of the new updated Legacy versions of these guys, if they come out in Legacy, you can actually use the original guys as the Insecticlones if you wanted to go that route and have both of them together. However, Kickback does not just sit around bossing other Insecticlones. He gets in the action sometimes because, as we can see here, he is taking on the boys from the sky because he is a legitimate aerial threat. And they're doing their best, but in the end, it doesn't matter whether he's in the air or on the ground because he can wreck fools either way he wants to. Which, at that point, if he's got all of his Insecticlones, you might have to call in the Bug Smashers to handle them. Now, here is our boy rocking his swords in robot mode, and I gotta say that, I do kind of like the way that looks. What's interesting is I was looking at these, I was like, well, can you actually hook both of these blades up like you do with the Shattered Glass Starscream? Well, unfortunately, they are molded identically the same. They're the same piece, so there isn't like a reverse peg and port, which, as you can see here, whenever he's facing off against Ironhide, it actually kind of adds a little bit more of an edgier dynamic to Kickback. So altogether, it works out pretty well. So if you're actually wanting to go with a more classic look, there's a couple things that we need to get out of the way first, just moving forward. Now, one thing that I am very glad is that the Legacy guys are still blast effect compatible. That is great. Also, additionally, I have had my answer to my question from a previous video if we were going to have the combat ports. Love that. Love it still around. Now, the one thing that is different from his old guy is, like we said, you know, the old boys, they love chrome on their wings and their guns. So they also changed up his gun. It actually has paint differentiating at least the drum and the barrel part. It's something small and nearly insignificant, but it does have a really kind of cool effect. Plus the fact that I do love he's rocking the red visor instead of just the straight black visor. However, we do come to one thing that is probably been speculated about, but we finally have our answer. Because on the old guys, because they were just, you know, reuses from Takara, they had the flip down deal. Well, that was retained whenever they did make this a sentient robot. So people logically thought, oh, okay, well this looks like a spring down here. This must be an empty cavity where we can have something similar. Well, I'm sorry to say, guys, that is not what that is. Because if you actually look pretty close, you can see that that is not a spring. That is actually the screw tip from this pin going this direction, and a screw tip from this pin going in the other, and you can see that that little bit of stuff right there is just the little bit of the plastic that got bored out and is in between those where the screw tips do not touch. So that is not a spring. Plus, the other thing that cancels out this theory is that this thing right here with the yellow chest, you can see that it's molded into this slot, which there is no way to make that pop out of there without cracking this yellow piece. Now, the way that they achieve the shiny effect is, I found this out on one of the lady limbs from the Orthea combiner, is that actually this is a silver molded bit that's placed behind this translucent or transparent yellow piece right here, so that it gives it a shiny effect in that color. But again, you know, if this thing folded down, you're kind of seeing the man behind the curtain, so to speak, and it would ruin the effect. Now granted, that is a lot of wasted space inside of there, but again, you have to think how Hasbro produces these. Even if the interior part of the figure is hollow, that saves on cost. So yeah, it's a waste of space, but it helps make him a little bit cheaper, which I am down with. So we can see our boy up here in the front with two of his Insecta clones, modeled after his friends, along with the Decepticons that are taking on our Bug Squasher squad. And I have to say that it is nice to finally actually see how he scales in comparison with Soundwave and Megatron, and he's even shorter than Soundwave. Now granted, all three of these guys are in pseudo-squatted poses, but even if they were standing up, Soundwave is significantly taller than Kickback. And then obviously Megatron is taller than Soundwave. So again, I think the robot mode is where the scale is definitely hitting. However, guys, I am digging Kickback. I'm really excited to actually show you guys this video. And other than that, guys, I don't really have anything else that I want to bring out. So, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And until next time, guys, we will actually see you in another review.
That's what I call going down to defeat from defeat.